nothing exciting.
No.
Don't get carried away.
I wasn't getting carried away.
So
I was not getting carried away. You know, if there was a female James Bond, what should they call her? And I said, Jenny Bond. Stop everything. Please. Prepare yourselves. Because even I'm excited about this.
So the acting, well, it wasn't brilliant, I've got to say, I'll be honest.
Do you know Jenny Bond? I think she's still royal correspondent.
She's royal correspondent, I think.
But she did used to.
Yeah.
Who remembers Spit the Dog?
Do you remember Spit the Dog? Do you remember him?
Bob Carroll, Jesus, Spit the Dog.
It was a puppet. Where's my ticket? Now, oh no!
What was that?
That was my ball of yarn. You know, like a big star trooper?
Star Troopers.
What's a star trooper? Oh no, my ticket's on the floor and my yarn's on the floor. Excuse me a second.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 145. And don't panic, you have not tuned in to the news at 10.
Do I look like I'm reading the news?
Oh yes, it's Moira Stewart.
Because I've got a shirt on.
Or Jenny Bond. Now, folks, you'll find out later on in the show the reason why Kay is wearing a shirt.
I had to wear a shirt.
It's a very special reason. You're going to like
weird
it.
in a shirt.
You're going to like it. Oh, yes. And the reason why Kay is wearing this shirt has also led her to cast on another garment. So when I say right now that this is going to be a show and a half, you better believe me. Because not only that, it's the final picture show.
Yes.
Of the year.
And it's an interesting one.
It's a very interesting one. Now, well, we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. But do you know what? It's been wonderful this season of Picture Show. I've thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. And I was really sad when we went to do our last one.
Yeah.
But then after watching the film, I'm quite happy it's finished.
Yeah. We've got a bit to say about it.
It's quite funny.
It is quite funny.
Now, talk about excited. About 6-7 months ago, I know, someone gifted me a Star Wars colourwork hat pattern. What surprised me was, normally I don't like Star Wars designs because they're too in your face.
Yeah.
I don't like obviousness. I like it to be a little bit subtle. So I like it to look like a normal garment and everything to be fine. And then only when you sort of look a bit closer do you realise. And what sucked me in about this particular hat pattern was exactly that. It wasn't obvious. It was classy, it was cool, and I was like, my goodness, I'd like to see more of, turned out, this lady's designs. So I clicked onto a shop, and I've got to say, my mind exploded.
Beautiful.
Not just the Star Wars ones, but like tons. There's one called Ocean.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's like
a sweater. It's beautiful.
But then there's also there's like long fingerless mitts.
Some wrist warmers that are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's all like
and you should follow her on Instagram.
Well, the pictures are tremendous.
Just the most beautiful feed of knitted things.
And we interviewed her in the latest Knitability. And what
really
an amazing
fascinating interview. Yeah.
It was so lovely to connect with someone who lives and works and has a studio in Russia.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, such a different culture to what we're used to.
And historically, so linked to knitting.
Yeah.
Really great knitting. And also, Gwen Shanek did our guest article, and it was all about walking. And the reason for that is, of course, she's taking part in our Race to the Moon, Cal. And I think it's time that we gave everyone a little bit of an update.
A little update?
Yes. Now, I'll start.
Oh, okay.
Only because I just mentioned Gwen and her walking.
Yeah.
And I can obviously then tell you how far we've travelled. Well, Walking Group are setting records.
Wow.
We've been doing activities which are open to everyone. This is the third year we've done something, and it's open to anyone. Anyone can come and get involved. And they have, in the first 2 months of the year, they broke the record in January, and then they broke it again in February. The Walking Group broke the record in the shortest month, in February.
That's right.
I mean, that's just tremendous. Now, the Walking Group did in January 1,648 miles.
Wow.
And in February, they did 1,732 miles.
That's brilliant, isn't it? And it had 3 2 less days because it was a leap year.
Yeah. Now, the running group in January did 1,044.54 miles. Just see how I'm adding in.
Getting every little yard.
Well, I am,
in.
because the walking group absolutely pasted the running group. So, and then in February, not a good effort, folks, 735 miles.
Oh.
But thankfully, the walking group is, because of their efforts, we're 600 miles up on where we need to be. For the year, the total so far is 5,161 miles.
The knitters. And we are knitting our way to the moon. So we have got to cover 238,900 miles, because that's approximately how far it is to the moon. And we are currently at 54,755.
Wow.
That's amazing. You know, we're doing brilliantly well. There's so many projects. And, you know, when I was going through adding them all up, you know, I was looking at all the projects, and it's just such a really lovely feed just to look through. So if you ever want any inspiration for, you know, thinking, oh, what shall I knit? I don't know what to knit. Just go and have a look in that thread on Ravelry, because it's just full of just beautiful projects. Things I've never seen patterns before, and, you know, yarns that I'd never seen. So it's a really lovely place to just go and have a browse through. Speaking
of knit-alongs, and yes, because whilst that is available to our patrons, I think it's time that we had a whole new knit-along.
Yes.
That's open to everybody. So what is it, Kay? What are we going to do?
Well, the reason we're starting a new knit-along, first of all, is that the Bits and Bobbin along knit-along has just finished at the end of February, and I'm going to be announcing the prizes for that in Endy Bits.
Wonderful.
But our new knit-along, which starts from today, the thought for this knit-along came about when we were doing our last POP, our patron-only podcast that we do. And we got kind of chatting about knitting and how we knit and in what kind of environment we generally do our knitting, because I'd seen one of my friends on Instagram had posted something that really just struck me, and she said that she was in her cabin. They've got a little cabin. She was knitting away, but there was there was nothing going on around her. She'd just got the fire going and she was knitting, and it kind of struck her how relaxing that was, just to be knitting and just have no outside noise going on. That
directly then appealed to me, because the whole reason why I got hooked on knitting was because of that feeling that you get when all you're doing is knitting. And you get in that, it's when my brain starts to vibrate. That's what it feels like. Like
probably the vast majority of us, I generally knit, and I'm usually either listening to something, or, you know, there's something I'm watching on Netflix is on in the background. But usually there's some kind of distraction, you know, there's some other thing that I'm doing at the same time. And, you know, we got chatting about this, and I just thought, you know, maybe we should just try and carve out a little bit of time every day.
Even if it's just 10 minutes.
Even if it's only 10 minutes, you know, everybody's lives are different and we don't all have the same amount of time to knit. But just to pull ourselves away from,
it's the world, really.
It is the world. So, you know, no TV, no radio, no phones.
What you'll find is the effect it has is quite profound.
Yeah.
Because it just gives your brain, imagine that your brain's a muscle, and imagine that you've just been running and your muscles are all, you need that time to just relax and to wind down.
Yeah.
And that's what that is.
Yeah, and it you know, a lot of people don't like this word, but it is true, and it's basically what this activity is, and it's being mindful about what we're doing. Once you actually think about what it means, then you think, actually, that is something that we should all be doing. Yeah, so I'll just read this out. It's a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts and bodily sensations. I don't think that's something you can ever do whilst you've got YouTube on in the background, or you're watching Netflix, or you've got the radio on, or, you know,
any form of multisensory engagement is not going to allow that to happen, is it?
No, and it's like it's meditation, isn't it? Really, it's a form of meditation.
I also think that can be quite scary to allow yourself to do that.
Yeah,
because the world is so busy and noisy.
Yeah, and generally I like to keep my brain full of something so that my brain doesn't start working on things that are not good for me. So for me, this is quite a difficult thing. But I think it's a good thing to be able to, I think you've got to learn how to relax and how to be mindful and, how to get into that more sort of meditative state. Yeah. So I think it just struck us that maybe, let's do a knit along based around this. And we're going to call it the BB Bakery Bears Be Mindful knit along. So it looks quite cute when you hashtag it. So we're going to start it today. And what I propose that we all do is that if there's a project that you've got already that you're working on that you think would be suitable, then that's fine. If you would like to choose a new project to work on during this knit along that's specifically for this purpose, it's your kind of mindful project, then I think that's a fun thing to do if you sort of have a look around and decide what it is you want to work on. What I'm going to do, and again, it's entirely up to you how you do this, but I'm just going to remove all of my devices from wherever I am that I'm going to do this. Just find, if you're in your house, find sort of the little quietest, coziest corner that you can. You might want to be outside, if you're in the southern hemisphere at this time of year. If you want to, light a candle, I think that's just a nice thing for you to, if you find your focus is, if you find your brain is steering away from where it should be, just focusing on your knitting, I think having something just to rest your eyes on. And
you've got the right project though, because I've noticed that recently with a project that you'll be showing in What's on Your Needles, you have to have silence when you're knitting it.
Yes, and I've chose a project specifically that I know I've got to concentrate on, because I think that again will help you just to focus on that one thing. If you choose a project that you know really well, or just something that's knitting round and round and round, you've got more risk, I think, of your brain starting to whir on things. Whereas if you've got a project that you've got to, takes a bit of concentration, then that's going to fill your brain, and that will then allow it just to kind of rest from all the other.
You've just described my whole quest for projects.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for those projects which engage my brain so that then I can get into that relaxed state. Yeah,
and it just forces you to focus on just that one thing. And that's what meditation is. It's kind of clearing your mind and just focusing. Hopefully you could do it every day. I know everybody's lives are different, but like I said, even if it's only 10 minutes a day, I think it would be really worthwhile. I mean, I'm going to try and aim for about an hour, because the project I'm working on that I'm going to show you, each repeat takes me about an hour. So we're going to start that today, and it'll end on May Day, which is 8th of May. So it's about 2 months, which I think is a really nice amount of time to see if you enjoy this way of knitting and this way of, having this little bit of time every day where we're just focusing on that one thing.
I think as well that it is a good idea to do something like this at a time when it seems in the world that things are all a bit bonkers.
It does, I think.
We certainly won't dwell on anything.
No.
But what you will find is by doing tasks like this, you'll suddenly realise, actually, the bonkersness doesn't really exist in my circle of trust. We've specifically taken sort of moves over the last week or so to try and really sort of focus on, what is going on directly in our world, and actually how much stress does that cause us. And then you start to realise that a huge proportion of the stress which you may be feeling, we were certainly feeling, is coming from external sources which probably will never affect you. Yeah.
A lot of the times with anxiety, that's exactly what happens. You get completely worked up about X, Y, Z, and then XYZ never happens. 95% of the time, the things that we worry about and get anxious about, just either they don't happen, or you find that it's something that you can actually deal with.
You can be whipped up into a frenzy without even realising it for no reason whatsoever.
It's true.
And, I think it's all our responsibility, everyone who lives on this lovely planet. It's our responsibility to take care of our world, because if we all did that, the whole world would be a lovely place.
True.
Yes. Yeah. Now, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Well, My goodness, let me just tell you, I've got 3 new things to show you. All 3 of my What's on Your Needles are new this time.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm very excited. Now, the first thing I've got on my needles, I'm super excited
Stop
about.
everything. When I look at this, I'm excited.
I'm really excited about this. So, it's a pair of socks, and, that in itself doesn't sound terribly exciting. However, for probably years, I've had this issue, let's say, with knitting socks toe up. I just could never get into it. And also with the whole afterthought heel business. Again, I just, for whatever reason, just couldn't get into it. The fit was never right. I didn't like the way that it was done. I didn't like the shape of the heel. And toe up, I didn't like doing. I really don't like, and I've tried it numerous times. I just can't seem to get on with the
Judy's Magic Cast On.
Thank you, Judy's Magic Cast On. I just, for whatever reason, really struggle with that.
Do you know, every so often something happens in my sort of knitting knowledge, and I'm like,
well done for remembering that. But I wanted to tackle this whole area of problem for me, if you like, of toe-up socks and afterthought heels. And I thought, right, okay, look, I've got a really great toe that I love with my umbrella toe. That's been knit so many times now by so many knitters that I know that it's a toe that works and people really like. So I thought, is there a way of me adapting that to work toe up? And then also, can I adapt it to make it work for an afterthought heel? And this is a true afterthought. So we're cutting a strand of yarn to take it out, because I've tried doing the ones where you put in waste yarn, and I just didn't like the end bits here. I just always found that it looked messy, and I always had trouble sort of picking up the stitches from waste yarn. It never seemed even. I always ended up a bit kind of skew-whiff somehow. So I thought, right, okay, let's try the true afterthought heel and see if that is any better. So I spent some time doing little swatches of toes, swatches of heels and all this business, and then I thought, right, okay, let's just cast on a sock. Let's just do it. And I've knit a sock, and I'm on the second one. And I finished this sock last week sometime, and I was so terrified to try it on. I thought, this is just not, I'm going to try. I said to Dan, it looks great, but I'm going to try it on and it's going to be awful. It's not going to fit. The
thing is, though, I think it's like anything in life. You planned and worked out and spent so much time and effort in thinking about the toe, thinking about the heel, working out, okay, how is this going to work? How's it going to fit? That unless you'd positioned it in completely the wrong place.
Yeah, which is another thing, positioning the heel when you're working toe up is entirely different to working top down. Because, working top down, cuff down, you get to the heel, you've worked to the leg and you get to the heel, and then you work the heel and then you work the foot, and you can always try it on your foot, can't you? Quite often you can just stick the sock on. It goes over your heel, and then you can measure to see where you then need to start your toe. And that process, I find, is much easier than trying to work it the other way. So you've got to know when to stop knitting your foot and then put in the heel. The times that I've tried to do that, like I've done the foot's been a bit too long or it's been too short, or I think it's just a trickier thing to work out. So again, I spent some time measuring and calculating and working out and just pondering on this whole thing to get the heel placement in the right place. And so I finished the sock, I tried it on, and it fit really well. It wasn't stretching too much over the instep, because that's always my bother. I've got a high instep, but I've also got quite chunky ankles. So that kind of area over my instep is always the problem, and it really wasn't pulling too much at all. I got Bryony to try it on, because she's the same size shoe as me, and it fit her even better. And I said to her, she had she had a pair of socks on at the time, hand knit socks, and she's like, oh, what are you doing? I made her take one off and put this one on, and I said, right, close your eyes, does it feel any different to the other sock? And she said it didn't, it felt just as comfortable, and she really liked them, and she asked if they were going to be for her. So that's always a good sign. And then the cast off, the bind off at the top of at the cuff, that was the other thing that I always disliked. because I could never find a bind off that I liked the look of. And then I resolved that fairly recently, maybe a few months ago. I've mentioned this before, that I found a particular bind off that mimics the look of a long tail cast on. So that problem was solved, and it's nice and stretchy, works beautifully. So I finished a sock, and I chose some stripy yarn because I thought that would, you know, look the best, I suppose. And this is the sock that I produced. So we've got a sort of toe up umbrella toe, and then we obviously work up the foot, and then we've got an umbrella heel. Now this is my umbrella toe, but I've modified it quite a lot to give more depth and just to make this less kind of, well, to make it fit the heel better than, because your toes are obviously shaped different to the back of your heel. So I just modified that as well, just to make sure that it fit the back of the heel really well. It fits really nicely. I wanted to make sure that the corners here were really neat. So I found a technique which means that you don't really get any holes there. So there's the heel. And what I like about it is it's nice and sort of broad this way. There's plenty of room this way. And I think the heels I've tried before that have been kind of afterthought or short row heels, they've always looked tiny. You know, the actual area that they cover seems very small. And I thought, well, I wonder if that's what the issue with fit is, that it just needs to be a bigger area in general. It needs to be deeper, and it needs to be more roomy altogether. And this just seems to fit really, you know, it just seems to work really well. And then the best thing about working this pair of socks was that I just absolutely loved doing it. You know, the toe was a dream, and I didn't use
Judy's Magic Cast On.
Thank you. I didn't use that cast on. I used a Turkish cast on. Never done it before. So I thought, right, okay, let's try that one. Oh my goodness, I thought it can't be this easy. It really was that easy. And I did it, you know, I tried it 4 or 5 times, one after the other. Absolutely brilliant. You know, you could obviously use whatever cast on you wanted to use, but for me, the Turkish cast on was brilliant. And, you know, the yarn ended up on the inside of the sock, so it was ready to weave in when you'd finished it. Because sometimes when I do other ones, I end up with the tail outside of my sock, and I'm like, how did that happen? But with this, it was always on the inside. Perfect. When you're working toe up, you've got to do increases as opposed to decreases when you work in the other direction. So I tried lots of different increases before I decided on the increase I wanted to use that would give me the look of an umbrella toe as well, because different increases look different, don't they, in the fabric. And I wanted one that gave me that look of the umbrella toe with the sort of spines running down, because you can see that here with the heel, you get that look of an umbrella. So I wanted a similar look for the toe, and I think it looks pretty good. And again, it's really lovely to knit. And I'm on the second sock. Now this yarn, isn't it fabulous? Were you all looking at the yarn thinking, what is that yarn? It's from a UK dyer. So this yarn is from Stripy Cat's yarn. It's a UK dyer. And it's a sock set, and it's 2 50-gram skeins that are different colours, so I'll show you the other one in a second. But it's called Yin and Yang sock set. And it's kind of like one sock is half of the rainbow and the other sock is the other half of the rainbow. And it's just lovely. So, you know, that's the first sock, as I showed you, and I'm here on the second sock. Look at this one. How bright is that? So together, aren't they fun? And I've got loads left, absolutely loads of yarn left. This is my first ball. So what I'm thinking of doing is doing another pair of socks where I actually follow on. So I'll do one repeat of this and then follow on. No, you'd start with this, wouldn't you? Because it's like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And then, you know, keep swapping them so that you get a full rainbow. I think that would be fun. But it's gorgeous yarn, and I've actually washed and blocked this one and it didn't bleed at all, which is fantastic because it's very saturated. And then for the cuffs, heels and toes, I just used some Cascade Heritage, and it's just grey, I think is the colourway. It's 5660 in this lovely grey, because I just thought that went with the colours really nicely. And I used, I'm weighing everything and measuring everything just to see how much yarn a cuff, heel and toe takes. So obviously for, if I'm writing up a pattern, it's good to know that. And I think it's going to take me about 14 grams for a cuff, heel and toe on both socks in a 64 stitch. So obviously that'd be different with those sizes. I will be writing up a pattern for this, and I think, I was pondering over what to call them, and Dan gave me the answer.
Yes.
Because he said, well, it's obvious, isn't it? I said, no, not to me. He said, well, you need to call them the umbrella socks. Because it's, a modified umbrella toe, and it's a modified umbrella toe for the heel. So
yes.
They need to be.
And that's what it is.
Umbrella socks.
That's what they are.
That's what they are. And that's absolutely true.
So you're doing a pattern?
So I will do a pattern.
And when will it be released, woman?
Oh, gosh, don't put pressure on me, because, I want to finish this pair, and then I'm working out at the minute the other sizes, the heel and the toe for the other sizes, and then I'll get the pattern written, and I think I'm actually going to knit up another pair, because I want to be sure.
More than think, you've picked out the yarn.
Well, I don't know if I have.
Oh, you changed your mind?
I'm not sure. I want to find that sort of perfect self-striping yarn. And, so I've been looking. I have got some self-striping yarn, but a lot of it is like Harry Potter themed or Christmas themed or Halloween themed. And I just wanted something that was just, not particularly themed in a way. But I'm just so excited about it. Actually, this one didn't take me that long.
No.
Because, it's just brilliant. It just felt like, I don't know, it's such a free thing to do, just to cast on a sock and then just knit, until I get to the cuff, and then do the cuff and then deal with the heel, which I loved doing, the whole cutting of the yarn, not a problem at all, really fun. Honestly, not an issue, really simple. And I'll be putting in video tutorials into this pattern. So I'll do a video tutorial for the cast on, and one for sorting out the heel, and then one for the bind off that I use as well. So it'll be a complete pattern. It will tell you where to stop and where to put your heel in, and I wanted it to be something that if you've never knitted a toe-up sock before and were not keen on them, as I was in that position, I wanted it to be something where it's a full pattern, where you can just purchase the pattern and know confidently that you're going to be able to knit the whole thing without having any issues. I'll always obviously love top-down socks with a heel flap and gusset, that's my first love, but I think to have another option and I think the reason I love this is, if you were going on holiday or in a position where you didn't want to have to think too much and faff around with, getting the heel done and the heel turn and pick up and all that, you can just cast on and just have the whole lovely thing to knit, and then do both socks, and then maybe deal with the heels when you get home, something like that. It just adds so many options into my kind of knitting world that I was just super excited.
Cool.
So yeah, I'll keep you posted on the umbrella socks and the progress and everything. Dan Jones.
Oh.
What's on your needles?
It's another sock.
Oh my goodness.
But it's a heel flap and gusset sock.
Yes.
Oh yes. Look, you may be stunned at the progress. Are you?
I am stunned.
The last time you saw this, I think there was about 3 rows, and Kay was taking the mick saying that I shouldn't be showing it because I'd not knit enough. Well, look now, the whole leg is done, and I'm onto the heel flap. And I was thrilled to see on the heel flap, it's a garter stitch Endy Bits.
Oh yeah. Garter stitch. Yeah, it's a garter stitch Endy Bits heel flap.
But this is the Nutkin socks. Oh wowzers! Do I love knitting lace? It's so cool. I would never have knit lace, And thanks to Robin, absolutely beating me to a fine pulp in Knittle Forfeit about 4 years ago. I knit my first lace project, which was, of course, the spear grass hat, which I loved. I've neglected lace a little bit. I can't really recall until I cast on the Whispers in the Wall sock.
You sort of moved on to colourwork, didn't you?
This is way more lacy though than the Whispers in the Wall sock.
Yes, it is.
Whispers in the Walls is more. I love that pattern.
Yeah.
I really, really love this pattern, but that for me is like perfect. And the reason why it's so perfect is because you've got the combination of lace and pretend cables, although I'm calling them cables. I called them cables and you were like, no,
You
they're not really
don't need a
cables.
cable needle, but it looks like a cable.
It does. So it's a cable. If it looks like a cable and it smells like a cable, it's a cable. And so that for me is like perfect. But I've got to say, the sort of the delicateness and the prettiness and the, it's like, yes. I knit these and I go, yes. What I've loved the most, actually, and it's funny that I'm going to say this now.
It's lovely. And on the back.
Is I've sort of grown to appreciate the yarn.
Yeah, you weren't keen, were you?
And I'll tell you now why I've suddenly appreciated it more. It's on the heel flap.
Right.
And
nice definition.
Yes. For me, I feel like there's more definition on that heel flap than any heel flaps I've done recently. And, it just
lovely.
looks...
Yeah, it's
it
lovely.
looks so pretty. But what I'm doing with this sock, which I didn't have the confidence to do with the Whispers in the Wall socks, is I am putting on the back detailing, and I've sort of messed up slightly. Well, it's fine. I didn't quite tighten the second stitch enough on the changeover of the needles on the back here, and that's just resulted in it being slightly gappy.
Yeah, you've got like a knit stitch is a little bit gappy. But it's not too bad.
No.
But it just has like one of the little twisted stitches running down that's like...
That is the reason why I
trees.
didn't do the business on the back of the Whispers in the Wall socks. And the thing is, though, to get better at anything, you've got to do it, haven't you? So, after talking with my sensei...
Silly thing.
I put the pattern on the back as well, and I'm really glad I have, because I think it really brings, for me, unlike the Whispers in the Wall socks, I think the Whispers in the Wall socks you can get away with not putting on that back detailing.
Yeah.
With this and this are linked, aren't they?
They are. It's a repeat of that centre thing, and I think it shows up the most when you put it in the orientation that it'll be on your foot.
Yeah.
You get a little hint of that detail on the back of the leg, which I think is nice. But the yarn is, I think it's lovely, but I had a feeling that you might not be keen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm appreciating it more as I go.
The yarn is the Uncommon Thread, and it's Tough Sock, which is an 80-20. It's Blueface Leicester and nylon.
And I remember that the Uncommon Thread Tough Sock was one of the very first reviews that you ever did.
Yeah, I've used it a lot for socks, and it wears really well, and I always loved it. And it's Into Dust is this. It's worn off a little bit, the name, but it's Into Dust. And I just had a feeling you might not love it because it's only a 2-ply. And you like really bouncy yarns. And
I think when you asked me before what I thought of it, I said I felt
a bit stringy.
It was a bit stringy.
Yeah. And that's just because it's a 2-ply. Yeah. And it's just a different thing, isn't it? 2-ply as opposed to a 3 or a 4-ply. So I had a feeling you might say that. But it's knitting up lovely.
It is, and I am really appreciating it now. Now I've got through this first section, I can really see the difference. And it's nice to try different things. And what else is on your needles?
Well, now, this is my mindful knit-along project.
Ooh!
Yes! It's just got so very excited. So, I finished a certain something, which you will be seeing. After I finished a certain something, I just had this urge to knit down another tank top, pullover vest thing. Do you know his green one that he wears?
Tank top pullover vest thing?
Well, I call it a tank top. My mum calls it a pullover.
Well, a pullover to me is a sweater.
It's a jumper, isn't it? A pullover. But she calls it a pullover. And actually, in some of the old patterns, it's called a pullover.
Right.
So maybe that's an older term for it.
But perhaps they called anything that was wool
pulled over your head
a pullover.
And I know in America it would be called a vest, I think. I don't know. But you know the one.
In my world, they were always tank
tops. I really wanted to knit down another tank top, and I really wanted to knit it from a vintage pattern because I really enjoyed knitting that last one in 2 pieces, the old-fashioned way, sewing it together, and it just works really well, and you wear it so much.
For all the wailing and gnashing of teeth that came with a penguono, this is the outcome.
Well, that's true, actually, because
your perspective has been reset.
Yeah, that's right. Because I had so much angst over the penguono, and I'll talk about that in a bit, that I just thought, do you know what? Any garment after knitting that is just going to feel like heaven. So it definitely served a purpose.
Well, you've done loads.
And I have done quite a lot. Now, I went looking for a pattern, and I did look on Ravelry, and I've looked several times on Ravelry for a vest pattern that's not in the round, and I know I could convert it. You know, I know people will say, well, if it's in the round, you can just knit it in pieces, and I could do that, but I didn't want to have to spend the time working that out. You know, I just wanted to have a pattern to follow.
Yeah.
All the ones I was finding were knit in the round, and there were a couple that were in pieces, but I just didn't like them. So I thought, right, okay, I'm just going to try and search for a vintage tank top pattern. So I just Googled that, and I found, you know, quite a lot popped up, and then I found an Etsy shop. It sold patterns, you know, vintage patterns, but you could actually download them. It wasn't something that was physically posted, it was downloaded. So I found this pattern. It's an old Patons pattern, and the website actually is an Australian website, and the yarn is an Australian yarn from what I can gather. It's a Patons yarn, but it seemed to be one that was produced either in Australia or for the Australian market, I'm not sure. And this is the pattern that I found. It cost me £1.09. How brilliant is that? It's a pattern from the 80s, so I think the other one that I knit down was also from the 80s, so I think that must have been the era of producing this type of garment and this type of look. It's quite similar to his other one in a lot of ways. It's different but similar.
Yeah.
And this is the pattern. As you can see, it's his and hers. And I really like the hers one as well. I could see me wearing that. I really like it, but it's the V-neck that I'm going to be doing for Dan. So you can see it is similar in that you've got the two bands on the outer edges, which in this case are just moss stitch. On Dan's other ones, it was double moss stitch. And then you get some bands of cables with then like some twisted stitches here, which looks like a fern sort of running down, and then you've got this whole area of honeycomb cable. And it's knit in two pieces, you know, front and back. The back is the same, it's also got this on it, and it's a DK weight. Now this was like the sort of tricky working out bit. And the name of the pattern was His and Her Aran Vest with Neck Options. Isn't that catchy?
Yes, I was thinking that.
Yeah, it's a really catchy name, look. And the yarn that it uses is a yarn called Patons Totem, as in totem pole. Patons Totem 8-ply, and they come in 50-gram balls. Now, I googled this yarn, and it's a DK stroke light worsted superwash wool. You get 91 metres or 100 yards to 50 grams, and the gauge that it asks you to knit to is 22 stitches. So I had all of that information, and I thought, right, okay, that's brilliant, because I can now go and look for a suitable yarn. I really wanted to use a really lovely yarn, and I had a few in mind. I just failed to be able to get the yarns that I was thinking of. The first one I wanted to use was Blacker, and I think it's called Classic DK. Blacker Yarns Classic DK. And I went on the website, and I think they must have been having a sale of it, because it was reduced in price, which I thought is great, but they didn't have the colour that I wanted, and they didn't have very many colours. It's like loads of people have been buying it, you know, because it was on sale. And I searched around other places to try and find that, but just couldn't find the colour that I wanted with enough balls of yarn available. And then I thought, well, you know, let's look at Brooklyn Tweed, because they do the one called Arbor, don't they, which is a DK, and it looks beautiful. And I did look at that, but it's quite hard to get hold of in this country, and also in the colour that I wanted. I wanted a grey, not a super dark grey, not a super light grey. I just wanted something in the middle. And I did find one place, I think, that had enough balls of it in a grey, but it was a bit of a dark grey. I can't remember the name. I priced it up, and it would have cost me about £160 to knit a vest with Brooklyn Tweed, and I thought, do you know what, it's just too much. I can't really do that. I couldn't bring myself to spend that much money. I mean, that's really expensive, isn't it? I think it's something like £11 or £12 for a 50-gram skein, which to me is really expensive. So I had to sort of rule that one out. And then I thought, well, West Yorkshire Spinners do a Blueface Leicester DK. Let's look at that. They didn't have a grey. There was no grey whatsoever. I was like, what? So I just kept failing and failing and failing. And then I remembered that in my stash, Dan had got a leftover ball of a grey that you used for the Soldier.
Yeah.
As one of the contrast colours. And it's Drops Charisma.
So we know that it knits up great.
Yeah, we know that Drops Charisma knits up nicely, it washes really nicely, and it's, a really good price. And I try as I might to use a more kind of exclusive yarn, if you like. I just couldn't seem to be able to do it. And I knew I had a 50 or leftover ball, so I went and got it, and it's colour 21. I think it's something like mid-grey mix, I think it's called. So it Drops Charisma, and it does say mix on the front there. And it's colour 21. And it cost me, I think, £28 for all of the yarn. You can't argue with that price, can you?
No.
It's 100% wool. I don't know what kind of wool. And the gauge on the back of the ball band for 4mm is 21 stitches. And the gauge it's asking you to knit to on a 4mm needle was 22 in the pattern. So I thought, if I go down a needle size to 3.75, I bet I could get 22 stitches. So I swatched, and I did. I got exactly 22 stitches, and even the row gauge was pretty much there. I mean, I don't pay that much attention to row gauge because you can always knit it longer or shorter, can't you? But it actually wasn't that far off, the row gauge as well. So right, okay, well, it's telling me, isn't it, that that's the yarn I need to use. So I ordered it, and it came, and I cast on. So I'm working on the back currently, and this is where I'm at. So all that talking, you've just been like, show us where you're up to. But look how much I've done. And isn't it lovely? Now I'm knitting the sizes were a bit peculiar, because it says at the top, it said that these garments are designed to be a generous fit. Dan doesn't like generous fit.
No.
He likes it to be fairly close to body. But there was a size that was in inches. It fit chest 40 to 42, and I thought, well, that's perfect, because Dan's a 44, so if these are a generous fit and I knit the 40 to 42, I think that should be about right.
Yeah.
And when I've looked at the size of this, it looks kind of right, and we've put it up against you, and it seems to be right. And I've obviously got these other vests as well that I can measure it against. And so far, it looks about, judging by how I felt about the other one when I was knitting it, I think this looks about the right size. But look at that, isn't it lovely? So you get these moss stitch borders, which I just absolutely am crazy about moss stitch, and I really like knitting it. I know a lot of you don't, and I'm really sorry that you don't, but I don't.
Is that
like
moss stitch?
No, no. I think that's called box stitch.
Not on here, it's not.
No, not on there, but in one of my stitch dictionaries, I think it's called box stitch. Dan's doing knit 2, purl 2 for 2 rows, and then purl 2, knit 2 for 2 rows.
It's definitely called moss stitch in this.
That's not moss stitch.
Right.
This is the thing, we in this country, I've always known this as moss stitch. In America, I think you might call it seed stitch. I'm not sure if it's called anything else. But then I've seen other stitchers, like Dan's just said in the pattern he's knitting in the Cascades. She calls what he's knitting moss stitch, but I don't think that's moss stitch at all. It's one of those areas where it's called the same thing and it's a bit different. But I would always call this moss stitch.
That's not confusing.
No, no. So you've got these moss stitch panels either side.
It'd be like us calling different yarn weights different names all over the world. That wouldn't be confusing for people at all.
So we've got moss stitch, and then we've got a band of, it's twisted stitches that move. So you do use a cable needle, but it produces like a little sort of plant sort of shape running up like branches or fern. And then you've got a cable there, and then you go into the honeycomb cable, and then the same on the other side. So cable, twisted stitches, and then moss stitch. It's just lovely. And I'm really, really pleased with this yarn. It's got so much depth to it. Can you see all the tones? And I think when you look at it, to me, I think it looks like a much more expensive yarn. Is that just me, or do you think that as well? And it does look.
It does.
It does look.
We know it does.
Yeah.
The Solia looks superb.
Yeah, it does, and it knits lovely. It's got a slight sort of fluffy halo to it. I don't know if you can see on that. It does remind me of a more woolly wool, but it isn't.
I didn't have a lot of issue.
No, there's. With
haloing. With me pulling on the Solia.
No. You can feel that it's wool, but it's really not bad. It's in terms of scratchiness. There's things that are way, way scratchier than this. It's really not bad at all. And this is something that's worn over a shirt, so you're just not going to feel any of that. I wear the Solia, which is knit out of this with. Just a little vest underneath, and I never have an issue. The pattern is an 8-row repeat, and I found that when I first started it, that was taking me probably around sort of an hour and 20 minutes to do that 8-row repeat, because some of the rows are dead simple. All you've got really going on are knits and purls and knitting through the back loops and things like that. You've got some rows that are obviously cables, and it's intense cables, It's cable all the way across, and then you've got another cable, and then you've got twisted stitches which move, which involves a cable. So those rows take me much longer. But overall, I would say it's taken about an hour and 20 minutes to do that 8-row repeat. And you can see I've done 5 repeats. It's easy to count because each of these little ferny things is 1 repeat. You do need to focus. You've got a lot going on. There isn't any sort of rest rows where you're just purling. That's not happening because of your moss stitch, obviously, and then these twisted stitches involve purling through the back loop. I really like purling through the back loop. It's really cool. I don't find it difficult or a pain or anything. I really enjoy, and I look forward. I'm like, oh yes, purl through the back loop. I've been really enjoying it because it's just something a bit different. I don't find it fiddly. I find it, really pleasant to do. And it was funny because when you cast on a certain number of stitches and you knit the rib, and then it tells you on the last row of the rib on the wrong side, you have to increase a bunch of stitches. And I was like, gosh, this seems really weird, because you increase them across this area here, not in the moss stitch area, across the rest. It's about 30 odd stitches you increase by. And I thought that's just really strange, and I started to panic a bit. But actually I realised when I started knitting the honeycomb cable, it draws it in incredibly. Because if you look at the back, can you see how dimply it is? And that's the fabric being drawn in. And that's why you have to increase all of those stitches. Otherwise it'd go like that. It's an old-fashioned style pattern, so you know what they look like. You might not do, but they're brief. It just gives you the details you need. There's nothing extra. You've got to have a certain amount of knowledge, experience, I think, or be able to have the confidence to go and find out how to do something if you're not sure. Yeah. So what I did was I don't think I would advise anyone who hadn't had experience of knitting garments to knit an old pattern. No, I wouldn't either. But because within each of the rows, some bits I didn't have to knit because I was doing a certain size. So I thought, right, I'm going to rewrite all of the rows. And I did think about doing charts, but in the end I just rewrote it because I would have had to have done 3 charts. I would have had to have, you don't have to chart the moss stitch, obviously, you just moss stitch, but I would have had to have charted this bit and then the middle bit and then this bit again. So I would have had 3 charts on the go, and I just thought, I can follow the written. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm trying to get a repeat done if I find the time, because my brain needs to be quite awake to do this. It's not something I can work on at night time because my brain's just too frazzled by that point. So I'm trying to find, the days where I've got that little bit of space during the morning, preferably. I'm getting this done. So it's working really well and I'm loving it. And what do you think? Do you like it? Yes. I think it's going to look fab. It will. Should we just... Look, it even suits this shirt. It's marvellous. It does, because when you look at this size, when you stretch it, it is going to just under his underarm, so I think the size is going to be fine. Yeah, it'll be fine. I think it just looks great, and the colour's going to be perfect, I think.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, I'm using 3.75mm, my higher bamboos. Still love these needles. I'm using, you know, when I'm not knitting socks or hats or things like that, if I'm knitting something that needs interchangeable needles, I'm always using higher bamboos. Love them.
Well,
another garment.
Look at that.
Who would have thought?
Well, from me, they would have thought.
I know, but who would have thought from me?
They would not.
There'd be all this garment talk. I bet you've all had to sit down and have another coffee.
By all means.
Just to get over the shock.
But the learning point for all of us here is, and I've always said this, increase your engine size and you can run at a level that you would never have anticipated. You get the analogy I'm making, don't you? You know, you take something which you enjoy doing and you do it to the absolute max, and that then changes your perspective on what is challenging.
Well, it's true.
And what is not.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get to a point with this where I'm like, oh, I need to finish it. But that's fine, because I know I'll get to that point, and that's cool. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying it.
It's the Cascade sleeve, and it's just brilliant. It's the perfect sleeve, and I'll tell you absolutely why. Because you've got all this great whatever box stitch, moss stitch, you know, whatever country you're in, whatever you call this type of stitch. Because you've got this, which for me is a repeat over 4, isn't it? Yeah, it is. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
So you've got a 4-row repeat here, but then also you've got the seam, which is a 2-row repeat.
Right.
And because of that...
And how often are you doing increases?
Oh, there's loads. The increases just seem to go all the way up.
Yeah, it's...
Which I've never done a jumper where normally you increase and then you knit. With this, I'm still increasing when I'm 103 rows in.
Right. Yeah, it's a more shaped sleeve, I think, isn't it?
I'm perfectly cool with that, because it then keeps that even additional. That's a third element that you're thinking about as you go. And
shall I try putting it on my arm? This looks fine.
Great.
You know, look.
Once
but
the
it'll just
length
give
is
you an
right.
idea on what it looks like on the... It's lovely,
great.
Isn't it? And then on the inside, you'll have... Oops, no. Okay, I'll twist that around. On the inside, you'll have that lovely seam. Isn't that nice?
It's tremendous fun to knit. There's an awful lot to think about, and what I'm learning with this is I've never done these types of increases before. I'm doing invisible increases left and right.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge, and I'm learning loads, but I'm really starting to get there with it, which is good. Because, of course, dependent on what's going on in the pattern, sometimes you might be doing an invisible increase right knit or a right purl.
Right.
And it's different for each one. Similarly, left knit, left purl.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you are having to... I'm having to do a bit of flicking around again, because it's not the best laid out pattern. It's the Cascades.
I'm Michelle Wong.
The design, as you know, I've waxed lyrical about this for long enough. You know, it's such a well thought out and put together pattern. Just the layout of it is just not quite... It doesn't quite work for me. But, you know, once you're into it and you know what you're getting in return for your labours, you don't mind putting in that extra effort. What I found is just... I think we've spoken about perspective with regards to Kay and her now casting on that tank top for me. Similarly with this, after knitting through the body, your perspective of what's challenging and what isn't changes, and also you learn things that work for your brain. So I know now the types of notes I need to make, and I don't need to say much, and it reminds me what I'm doing, like B second. Have you got any idea what that means? Or F second?
No.
That's reminding me when I'm doing the twist. So I'm either going behind second stitch
or
front second stitch. So you learn all, you know, whatever works for you, you learn. And so now I just make a couple of notes and I'm fine. I don't have to go and refer to the charts and think, right, okay, what am I doing now? And I love that, you know, I love that twist. It's really fun. The yarn?
The yarn is the King Cole Merino Blend DK. I did think about using this one actually for Dan's vest, but I don't think it's... I think it's slightly lighter. I think it's slightly thinner than the one I'm using, so I went for the other. But this is truffle. But it's lovely yarn. Really gorgeous colour.
It's terrific.
Terrific.
Yes. It's great fun to work with. It works perfectly for the pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm continuing on with the knitting of this sleeve, and hopefully the next time you see this, maybe it might be nearly finished. But I've worked really hard on this.
Yeah, you
and
have.
I've only done that much.
But it takes some concentration, like you say, because you've got, you've got 3 things going on. You've got a 2-row repeat for the spine. You've got a 4-row repeat for the body of the pattern, and then you've got the increases.
And there's a lot of shifting around and twisting here and doing this there.
But you like all that stuff though.
No complaints from me.
No, and I know he likes all that stuff because of what we spoke about. He likes his brain to be full of what's going on in the project.
I can assure you I'm mindful knitting when I knit this project. Oh yes. What is the final thing you're going to show us today?
This is another new start. I can't say cast on because it's actually crochet. I was really missing not having a granny stripe blanket to work on. I finished Bryony's in December and she loves that blanket. It's so sweet. She uses it at certain times, I've noticed. She has certain blankets for certain times of day. She's a blanket girl. She does love blankets. And she has a special blanket for first thing in the morning, when she always has a blanket when she's having her breakfast, and she tends to use her granny stripe on a weekend, I've noticed. If she's like doing drawing or, we're watching a film or whatever, she'll get her granny stripe out. And it's so sweet because she'll go and she'll get hers and then she'll pick up either my bits and bobs or my burrow blanket, and she'll bring me a blanket as well. It's really sweet. We're a very blanket orientated family. But I was really...
I let the side down.
You do, because you're always too hot.
Which is surprising because whenever anybody touches my hands, they're like, oh my goodness, you're so cold.
Your hands are always cold, but your body's never really cold, is it?
No.
Not in need of a blanket cold. But you see, I don't even need to be cold to have a blanket. I'll have a blanket anytime. But I was really missing not having that granny stripe on the go, and especially I've been kind of searching for that perfect bedtime project, and because I've been struggling with things I've been knitting at bedtime recently, I've just been finding that I've been making the odd mistake. So it was annoying me that I was making like silly mistakes just because I was tired, and I thought, do you know what, granny stripe would be the perfect thing for bedtime crafting, because you don't really have to think. You can't really go wrong, and I haven't so far. I shouldn't say that, should I? But it's difficult to go wrong, I think. Yeah, you've got to count your clusters 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but I'm managing to do that so far. So I thought, right, I'm going to make this one for me, and I'm going to do it exactly the same size as I made Bryony's, because it's just a perfect one-person sofa size blanket. It's absolutely perfect size. So I thought I'm just going to do everything the same, but I'm going to use different yarns. And what I'm doing this time is I'm using pinks, peaches, and then any neutrals that I've got that are kind of leaning more towards peach or pink. Oh my goodness, I'm so in love with this thing, I can't even tell you. So this is how far in I am. Oh my goodness, look how pretty this is.
It's rhubarb crumble.
Oh, isn't it gorgeous? Oh, I just love it so much.
It's very nice.
I can't stop looking at it. And the best thing about doing a bit of this every night is because the light is a bit more dim at night time, isn't it? You're in bed working away, and so you can't see the true colours so much. So every morning when I'm sort of getting dressed, I'll get it out and just have a little look to see what that colour really looks like and what it looks like against the one I've just been working. And that's just been really nice. And it's made, I've been really excited to work on this every night. I'm like, oh, bedtime, lovely. I can do another row or another 2 rows or whatever. And I think it's great to have that bit of excitement and to look forward to working on something, isn't it? And I've been tempted some days, I'm thinking, oh, I could just do a bit of work on it. But I've resisted because I want to keep that excitement going. I want to keep that keenness, if you like, for the project. I want to keep the motivation going, and isn't it just lovely? And I like the combination of some sort of slightly brighter pops, like this pink here and this one here, and the little pops of pink down here, contrasting against the sort of calmer colours. I think having that bit of a contrast, it makes the other colours kind of pop, doesn't it? because you can see like this neutral stands out more when you work it next to one that's slightly darker. So I just went through my stash and I just pulled out any minis that were sort of peach or pink, and any leftover bits as well that were kind of that way leaning. So I started off with this one, and this was a yarn I dyed. This was called Tranquility, and it's like a peachy with little spots of grey in it. And then this was just a 5-gram mini from a friend. This was leftovers from my Mrs. Tiggy socks. This was a 10-gram mini from Kelly, Lay Family Yarns. This was a 20-gram mini from Kelly. And then these are 2 5-gram minis that were from a friend. So I like having wider stripes and then some narrower. I like the sort of difference, you know, that shows up. I think that's really nice. So I chained 200, and I'm using a 3mm hook, one of the clover ones, which is the one I used before, which is my favourite type of hook. And you know, a lot of people say they don't like that initial chaining, and then because you've got to then do double crochets into each of the chains. I really love it. I really love counting all the little chains, and I count in sort of 50, so I'll count 50, then I'll count another 50 and another 50 to know that I've got the right number. And then as I'm doing the double crochets, I'll count again just to make sure I've got the right number, and it was spot on. And this time I think I got it's difficult to get the tension right, isn't it, with the initial chain, because you don't want to be tight and you don't want to be super loose, but I think it looks lovely this time. It just seems really even and nice, and I just really enjoyed the sort of starting of it. And I've just got all of these, you know, all of these are sort of peachy, and then I've got pink mini there, and I've actually taken out of, do you know my Sherry Iris granny square blanket? I've got some of the leftovers from that, which are pink and peach toned, so they'll be going in, which is lovely. It's just, I just love it. And the one I'm putting in at the minute is Patisserie from Stranded Dye Works, you know, that I used for my Lady Mary mitts. So that one's going in because it's very definitely a light peachy tone. So I've got a huge amount of that, so I'll do a nice good amount of this one. These are the 3 things that I've kind of been working on the past couple of weeks, and I'm loving them all. I'm crazy mad about all of them and just really enjoying it, which it's not always the case, is it, with your projects? You can sometimes get in a bit of a rut, but I'm just loving everything right now, which is a fantastic feeling.
Well, would you believe that it's time for us to say goodbye to our current season of the Bakery Bears Picture Show? And perhaps fate has led us to this point, because whilst we started the series with our first ever joint 5-star reviews with the absolutely wonderful movie 1917, the question you've got to ask is, how will we finish? How will we bookend this series? Well, it's time for you to find out as we watch the final episode of the Bakery Bears Picture Show. At this time of year, getting out and about in these freezing cold temperatures is just not pleasant. But there is, of course, one place where you are guaranteed a warm welcome. The cinema! So join us over the next 3 episodes as we try and find films we both love. And in the chair of truth, we will give you our honest reviews. Welcome to the brand new series of the Bakery Bears Picture Show. Well, hello everybody, welcome to another exciting exciting episode, yes, of the Bakery Bears Picture Show. Of course you know by now that this is the show where we each take it in turns to anonymously select a movie.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what we're going to see today.
Nope.
The challenge is...
I do.
Yes, well, I hope you do.
I do.
Otherwise, we've not booked to see anything. So yes, this is a show where we each choose a different film each episode, and then we score it at the end of the show. And for us to have a fair crack at scoring, we of course know you all know these, but let's just check in one last time with those categories that we're going to be looking for in today's movie.
The first is the storyline. Could we follow it? And did we enjoy it? Then comes cinematography. In essence, how did the movie look as the director created a visual world that allows the story to be told in? Next is acting. Were the characters portrayed well and did we enjoy the performances? And finally comes music. Does the soundtrack enhance or detract from the overall experience of the film?
So we know what we're looking out for. What I want to find out now is what precisely are we seeing today? So please
what are we gonna see?
Reveal your final choice.
Well, for the final choice, I've gone for something that I really don't know what it's going to be like, but it's got one of our favourite actors in it. So that was my deciding thing. And we're going to see The Call of the Wild.
Oh, wow.
With Harrison Ford.
The famous Jack London book.
Yeah, Jack London book. Yeah, it's a really famous book, isn't it?
Oh, wow. It's a strategic choice. And I'm going to let you in on a secret, folks, as to why it's a strategic choice, because we've already listened to the soundtrack to this movie.
Oh, we have.
And the reason why we've already listened to the soundtrack is one of our favourite composers has written the soundtrack for this film. And the soundtrack is absolutely
It's really
superb.
good. The soundtrack.
John Powell.
Yeah. Of Solo fame.
Yes, and he's written the soundtrack for Call of the Wild, came out about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Probably when the film came out.
Probably was, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we have seen a trailer for this.
We have seen a trailer.
And we were slightly underwhelmed with the CGI dog.
It's a CGI dog. I mean, I don't know the story, but I know there's a dog in it. But it's a CGI dog, and I was completely unconvinced by this dog. So it'll be really interesting, I think.
But it's a clever choice because we already know we like the soundtrack.
We like the soundtrack, yeah. So that's a good start, isn't it?
I think it's a very good start. And also Dan Stevens is in it.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I knew that.
Matthew Crawley.
He is, yes.
He's been resurrected.
I think he plays like a villainous judge or something or other. Yes, I don't know. Well, we'll find out.
Be interesting.
So, should we go and take our seats and see what this film's like?
So that's it, we've seen the film.
But of course, you know all too well, we can say nothing until we're sat in the chair of truth.
Welcome everybody to the Chair of Truth. Oh my goodness, it's the last time this year we have a review to do. So let's find out what this film was about.
Okay, so Call of the Wild. Now this is a story set in the 1890s. During the Klondike Gold Rush kind of era, and it's set all in that area around the Yukon. It's centred around a dog called Buck, and it really is his story, and sort of humans play a part in that. And it starts off where he lives with a family, and he's a very big dog, and he kind of causes lots of sort of disruption in the house just because he's so large and unwieldy, but a lovely friendly dog, and everybody seems to like him. But then he gets kidnapped because people pay a lot of money for dogs. I don't know why, but that's in the story that people paid a lot of money for certain types of dogs. So he gets kidnapped, and then it's just his story of what happens to him after that point. So what did I think of the storyline itself? Well, I don't know the book as such. I know it is a book and I was aware of the book, but I've never read it, so I had no idea what the story was. I knew that it involved a dog, but other than that, I don't know how kind of true to the book it is. What did I think of the storyline? I don't know really. I think the problem was that I was so unconvinced by other things, which I'll talk about in sort of like the next segment, that I found it difficult to judge what I thought of the storyline. I guess, it's kind of interesting. This dog goes on this adventure. It was okay. The storyline was okay, but I didn't love it. It didn't grab me as such.
I read The Call of the Wild when I was about 12. I think my gran bought it for me. I remember it being sat on the bookshelf for a little while in my bedroom, And then eventually I remember going and picking it up. It's not a very long book, going up, picking it up and reading it, and I remember absolutely loving it. I thought it was full of adventure, and it just really encapsulated in your mind's eye. You felt like you were there. You know, you really felt like they put you slap bang in the middle of the story, and I think that's why it's such a classic. So when I found out today that we were seeing Call of the Wild, as you saw at the start, I was excited. You know, we'd listened to the soundtrack. I knew the book a little bit. Granted, it's a long time ago since I read it, so, you know, I can just remember my sort of emotions reading it. So I did go into it slightly cold because I couldn't really remember the story. I just remember it being rip-roaring adventure. So you would think the film was, wouldn't you? Oh dear. I find it hard to form the words to express to you how disappointing I felt the storyline was. It lacked pacing. You know, when you go see a film, you normally start off and there's normally, you know, it picks up pace and you'll find yourself being hooked into the story, and then there might be a plateau in the middle or a dip in the middle, and then it might rise towards the end to a big finale. This film, for me, never even got out of the traps. It never even got going. There was a sequence at the start of the film where you getting to know the dog Buck, and it just didn't feel real. So when you're first sort of suck into this story doesn't feel real, how on earth can you then possibly start to make emotional connections with it and start to buy into it, which is what you need to do to enjoy a film? The storyline to this film far from excited me. I would say at times, probably 2 or 3 times in the film, it was just downright boring. So for me, the storyline was terrible.
So the acting, well, it wasn't brilliant, I've got to say, I'll be honest. Saying that, I will say Harrison Ford, I thought it was great. Because he is great, isn't he? I generally like everything that he does, and he acted it really well. To say that he was acting alongside a CGI creature, I think he did a really good job. There was one other actor that I recognised. He was in Jurassic World. He's called Omar Sy, and I thought he was great. I really liked his character, but he wasn't in it very long. He was one of the owners sort of along the way, and he just wasn't in it long enough, I thought. But I liked him. As for the rest of the acting, I thought it was fairly poor, to be honest. Dan Stevens' part, Matthew Crawley from Downton, he played this villain type character. Oh, and it wasn't his best work. It really wasn't. He was playing it, it felt like he was playing it as kind of like an over-the-top villain type character. I don't know how to describe it really, but it just kind of made me cringe a little bit. Now I've got to move on to I can't say animal actors because it was all CGI, but the way that they portrayed the animals within it, and obviously the main character is Buck the dog, which is, I don't know what breed he is, it's just this kind of quite giant dog. It was awful, I'll be honest. I thought it was awful. Not the actual character of the animals or anything like that, he's a very sweet dog, but the CGI, the way it was done, I just wasn't convinced at all. It didn't look like real animals at all, none of them. There was lots of CGI animals and they all looked CGI to me. And it was just didn't convince me. When you compare this to Dolittle, for example, where there was also CGI animals, and if you remember, I said that I loved those animals and that thought they were great. These ones just didn't do it for me. It just didn't look like real animals, and because they didn't look like real animals, I made absolutely no connection with them at all, because it was like I was watching an animation. It actually felt more like an animated film than it did a real life film.
Now, there were some famous faces in there, from Bradley Whitford, from The West Wing. There was Karen Gillan, who of course was Doctor Who, and then she's been in Jumanji, and then of course Harrison Ford. So you definitely had a lineup of tremendous actors. But the problem with this was, because I'm not going to criticise, and Dan Stevens, of course. I will criticise, but we'll get on to that in a minute. Those other actors that I mentioned, I'm not going to criticise them. And the reason why I'm not going to criticise them is they all did a good job. The characters felt real, they felt believable. Harrison Ford, really, as soon as he came on screen, it just sort of lit up. But there is a massive but, and that is all of these characters are orbiting around on a very far periphery, a really far orbit around the central character, which is the dog Buck. And had that dog been even slightly believable, then that would have sucked all of those characters who were orbiting around, the story of this dog, and it would have given them heart. And because the dog lacked any heart whatsoever, because of how it looked, and also the way Buck was portrayed was beyond the realms of believability for dogs. It was like a caricature of a dog. It was like a cartoon dog. It was like a dog from Tom and Jerry. And so because of that, all the good work that's going on around the periphery with these other great actors was totally lost. Even Harrison Ford, great when he was on screen, but let down by the fact that he's on screen sat next to something that looks like it's off Looney Tunes. The acting in this film was not impressive, and the worst of it was from Dan Stevens. For a film to work, you need obviously a strong lead, something that you are rooting for, that you want to see do well, and that character then needs a nemesis, something that they've got to fight against and defeat. And this was like pantomime villain. I mean, if I'd been directing it, I'd have gone, right, stop everything. Look, Dan, you've got to make this character believable, because if it's not believable, how can we possibly dislike the character? I just found myself finding his acting humorous. So acting for me in this film was poor.
So the cinematography. Now this should have been one of the film's best points, because for goodness sake, it's set in the Yukon. Absolutely fantastic scenery all around them. Yet for some reason it looked to me like they'd just chosen to do everything on sets. There was one or two sort of sweeping shots where you got big scenes of the mountains and the rivers, and that clearly was actual footage, but it was just fleeting. And then the next minute, we're back in the snow on what to me looked like a set. It all really looked like it was on sets and then green screen sort of behind. Again, I wasn't convinced at all about the cinematography, and I really don't think it did anything for promoting the area or anything like that, because it just looked like sets.
This is a part of the world which I would absolutely love to come and visit, because any picture, you just go do a Google search, you look up images of this part of the world, it's breathtaking. Well, I don't know if this film was shot on location or if it was shot on a soundstage in a studio, but it looked like it was shot on a soundstage in a studio, and the reason for that was because the dogs, the animals in this film, did not feel real. So whether it was shot in the real place, on location or not, because those animals, those main characters, the main, focus of the film, because they just weren't believable, the cinematography looked terrible. So, I don't want to criticise the actual images of the Yukon, because I love them. So if in fact this film, was shot certain bits on location, it was the CGI that ruined it. Because I think when you take something that's not real and you stick it into something that is real, I think that then makes it a much more challenging thing to make it look right. When you consider Star Wars or, any of the sort of films which traditionally have a lot of CGI, they're in a fantasy world. So it's much easier to take the leap and believe, oh yes, that's an alien, that's a whatever, in a world that I don't know. When it is something that you know and you understand, when something looks right or not, and this just did not look right. And for me, that's the biggest insult for this film, because I expected to go and sit and watch this film and pine for getting on a plane and going canoeing down the Yukon, because I would love to do that. You know, I would love to go and, you know, explore and do everything that this film sets out to sell to me. But it just didn't. So I'm afraid I would have to say that the cinematography was awful because it felt like sets. It didn't feel real, and at no point did I feel sucked in. But what about the soundtrack? Well, because I dislike this film so much, because by the end of it I felt myself laughing at how bad what was appearing on the screen before me was, I now don't want to listen to a soundtrack which I enjoyed, because it's going to remind me of that travesty of a movie. Folks, I do apologise for being so vocal in how much I didn't enjoy this film, because I expected to think it was great. And I think this is where, you know, things can fall down, can't they? When you go in with an expectation, when it meets the expectation, everything's great. But if it doesn't even come close, I think that's when you can start to get quite passionate in your dislike. Now, John Powell is a superb composer. He's the guy who wrote the score. And when I listened to the score, when I listened to the soundtrack prior to watching the film, I was, in my mind's eye, imagining, it's a bit like when you read a book. It's a bit like going and reading The Call of the Wild and then going and watching the film. You're going to be disappointed. No, but my point is, you know what I mean? When you go and you read a book, the world that you go off into, for me, is always better than when you go and watch the film. John Powell, successfully with his music, sucked me into the story. You know, we've listened to it 4 or 5 times and we've loved it. Every bit of it, it's just been tremendous. When you put that music with this film, the music just disappeared. And I think it disappeared because there was zero engagement with what was going on in front of your eyes. And what's going in your ears, for me, is secondary. Visually, I think you're always going to be, that's where your focus is going to be. That's where, yes, I'm in this or I'm not. And if I'm not in this, it sort of doesn't matter how good the music is. I'm so disengaged with the film, I couldn't even remember. If I had seen this film and not listened to the soundtrack, there's no way I would ever go near the soundtrack. So, John Powell, I'm so sorry, because you're a tremendous composer and you have been let down by the film.
As we said sort of right at the beginning, we've actually listened to this soundtrack and we thought it was really, really great, really well put together, beautifully composed. It felt like where it was, if that makes sense. You know, we knew before we went to see the film, we knew it was kind of gold rush, set during the gold rush, and it had that feel. It had sort of an Irish lilt to it, and then a little bit of kind of the whole Deliverance thing going on, banjo-y a little bit, and I really enjoyed listening to the soundtrack. And it, you know, it was nice within the film as well. I feel like it kind of disappeared a bit into the background just because what I was watching on the screen I thought was just not very good, all in all. And the problem is, right, it's a really good soundtrack, it's a brilliant soundtrack, yet I don't think you would run out and buy this soundtrack having watched the film, because it didn't do it any justice. The film didn't do the soundtrack any justice. So I would really recommend that you go out and definitely purchase this soundtrack, because it's really lovely to listen to. It's just, we've listened to it quite a few times. It's really, really good. I would say that's probably the film's strongest point, is the music, which is a rare thing for me to say that, isn't it? Because normally I'm a bit kind of blur about the music. But I thought the soundtrack was great.
So what are my final thoughts? Well, I think the best way for me to sum this up is this. I was asked yesterday what my least favourite movie of all time is. And for me, it's always been Legends of the Fall, because it's so sad and upsetting and depressing. For me, there's nothing wrong with the film. The film makes me feel so awful. Why would I ever want to put myself through that? Well, I might need a few days to consider this, but right now, I would say to you that the worst film I've ever seen is The Call of the Wild. And the reason for that is I felt totally bored. I didn't believe anything I was watching, and it ruined a wonderful story and made a part of the world which I know is beautiful look unbelievable. So it couldn't really be any worse. So my final score for this film can only be one thing. Because we have to give it a star. I can't not give it any stars because we don't allow that. So all I can do is give it 1 star, and that's for the soundtrack.
So to sum up this film, it wasn't good. You know, we were sat in there and there wasn't a lot of people in the cinema, because there never is when, you know, the time of day that we go, but it was more older people that were in there, and we heard them laughing quite a lot, you know, when the dog was, because it gets up to quite a lot of antics, you know, and they were laughing quite a lot, and I was just looking at Dan and thinking, why are they laughing? It's just not funny. But it obviously was appealing to some people, so, you know, that's a good thing, that it was appealing at least to some people, if not to us. I think it could have been a really lovely film. And why, you know, I don't know why they didn't choose to use a real dog, but clearly it was down to money, and it must be a lot easier to film, you know, not having a real animal there, because they're unpredictable, aren't they? But if it had been a real dog, I just feel like I would have made more of a connection to the film, and I would have had more empathy and more, I don't know, I just would have felt something for the dog, but I really didn't feel anything for any of the animals, and I was like, gosh, this is terrible, because, you know, normally films that have animals in, I generally avoid because I find them too upsetting. Do you know, things like Warhorse and Lassie and things like that? I just can't watch them because I find them too upsetting. But I didn't have a single emotion with this just because they weren't real animals. I didn't hate it, but I was very glad when it finished. So what would I score it? It's a tricky one, but I think it's gonna have to be 1 star.
Folks, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. That is the end of another season of the Bakery Bears Picture Show.
Last one.
I'm gonna miss our monthly trips
I know, I'll
to the
miss it
cinema.
too, yeah.
Oh yes, but folks, don't fret, because of course you can rewatch all this series, and you can even watch last series, and we'll be back in 2021.
Wow, it's very space age.
I know,
isn't it?
for a brand new season. Let's make 2021 the season of the space movies.
I know, let's hope so. I love some spacey films.
That'd be good. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for watching this
Thanks,
season.
everyone.
And we will see you next year for a brand new series.
Well, can you believe it? In this second season of the Picture Show, we've had a joint 5-star review. We've had a joint 1-star review. But just let me give you this one final little tidbit. And as soon as this character appeared, an alarm went off in my brain, but it was only afterwards. It was only when we were sat filming and thinking about the review that it suddenly dawned on me the reason why fate perhaps had led us to not take that film very seriously. Who remembers Spit the dog?
Do you remember Spit the dog? Do you remember him?
Bob Carroll Jesus Spit the dog.
It was a puppet.
And in this film, there was a character called Spitz the dog.
Spitz. Yeah, I think it was meant to be like a German name, maybe. I'm not sure.
But
he was like
even without knowing about Spit the dog, Spitz.
Yeah, he was like the evil lead dog that Buck ended up having to like fight off.
Yes, but the funny thing is, we went in with such high hopes.
Yeah, we did. You know, we've always got an open mind, and I didn't know the story at all, you know, and I think there's been a lot added to it from what we can gather, because I think it's quite a short book.
Yes, it is. The reason why that movie failed and Dolittle worked is because Dolittle, the main focus is not the animals. It is the characters and the animals.
Story and the animals are
the animals are around. This, how was it ever going to work? There's just no way things that, you know, do not exist, totally make believe, are ever going to sit perfectly in a real world environment. My advice is, I wouldn't go watch it.
I wouldn't recommend it, really. I wouldn't. I mean,
but of course, everyone's
different. There was a number of people in there that were laughing.
You said, honey, as you said in the review.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe you might enjoy it, but we certainly did not. And it is the perfect way, I think, to end the series, because whilst there are the 5-star films,
highs and lows,
there's got to be the 1 stars. Yeah. But you know what that means. As we say goodbye to the Picture Show, it's time for the year to really get going. Because next episode 146, the Pudding Club is back. Woohoo! For its regular run.
Yes.
This will be the show, along with new adventures,
Yep.
that will take us through to Christmas.
Gosh, wow.
Just stop everything. The pudding. Oh, well, I'm excited.
I've been thinking and
She's been researching.
and yeah.
Get ready. This is going to be one of the most boundary-pushing pudding clubs. Hey, that
do you
sounds
think?
good. That you've ever
Oh
produced.
gosh, don't say that. I was putting huge pressure on it.
Taking the inspirations.
I never do anything really complicated because that's not what I do, but
No.
involved. There might be some things that are a little bit more involved, let's say.
A bit like the penguono. Look, it's here. So, folks, I think it's time that I asked. Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
What is off my needles, everyone? What have I finished?
Ta-da!
I finished the penguono, as you can see.
And isn't it flattering?
I've honestly got to say that it's possibly the least flattering thing that I've ever put on my body. Honestly, I really do think that. It's perfectly, for what I want it for, which is a pyjama cardigan, it's great.
Yeah.
It's warm, it's cosy, perfect. Would I wear this in any other circumstances? No, I wouldn't. It's just not flattering, and I don't think it's intended to be flattering, really. No. I don't know how it can be just from the oversizedness of it. And I've not even knit a size that's huge. There are some sizes much bigger. I think I knit about the size large.
The funny thing is, though, Kay, I'm just thinking about all the
I'll stand up.
All the men and women I've known through my life. I can't recall any person I've ever met who didn't like wearing things that they felt good in. Yeah. And I think there's two elements to you feeling good in a garment. The first is it comfortable? The second is, do I feel like I look good in it? And I think if either of those things are missing... Yeah. In fact, sometimes I think people will forego the is
comfort,
it comfortable?
Absolutely.
Over the do I look good in it?
Especially women, I would say.
And also as well, when you feel good in something, I always have upheld that anything is in fashion that you feel good in. Because if you feel good in it,
you will
naturally
look good. You will look good.
You'll feel confident.
Yeah,
so if you don't feel quite right...
I've never felt more wrong.
It is totally like some sort of space age, if you put this on one of the aliens in the cantina in Star Wars...
I don't know. I mean, if I stand up, you can just see how oversized... I mean, the thing I dislike the most about it is it makes me look enormous.
You already have issues.
I've always had issues over that. I've been a lot bigger in my life, and in my head, I'm still a big person. So to have something that just makes me look even bigger is incredibly jarring.
Yes.
But, I'm showing you just so you know. But this is how wide it is, and I'm
There's
kind
room
of
in here.
Look, I'm sort of over here kind of thing. And this is like out here, it feels like.
The funny thing is, if you...
Well, you could actually put... But then you see, it just still makes me look big. It still makes me look big. Yeah, and, there's just so much going on. And you've obviously got the welts look on the back.
And
it rides up a bit at the back as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't, if I show you side on, can you see how it kind of rides up at the back?
But look,
I don't really like that very much. But
what's frustrating about this situation is you can see just by looking at it, you can just see the work. You can see the design elements.
Huge amount of work.
So with regards to the design itself, how it's been put together, you can see that it's very clever.
It's brilliant.
But also you can see the fact that as a knitter to be able to do this, you need to be pretty good.
You've got to have a certain amount of experience, I would say. An ability to knit one of these.
So it's a great way.
Just be, someone who's willing to sort of have a go, do some research if they get stuck, that kind of thing.
It definitely shows off technique.
Yeah, and this I-cord, I mentioned this I-cord bind off last time. It took me 4 hours to do the bind off. And I'm not super fast, I'm not super slow. I would say I'm fairly average in terms of speed. 4 hours it took me. I had to do it in about 3 or 4 sessions. I just couldn't hack it all at once. And I don't particularly like, this is where it started here and ended obviously here. And I've done my best. I did kind of spray block it, but I've done my best to even out that bump, and I tried to join it. It doesn't look bad, the join, does it? No. But I couldn't stop avoiding having this bump here. Can you, if I hold it, you might not be able to see. I'll hold it closer, look. It's not bad, it's just a minor thing, I suppose. And funnily, the short rows that you do for the collar, and I don't know whether it's meant to fold back like that.
Probably.
But mine just seems to want to lie flat.
Right.
But I suppose, again, it doesn't really matter, does it? But you can see the short rows going on here in the collar bit. And the way he did the short rows, do you know what? I'm going to take it off to show you, because I kind of want to take it off now.
A bit warm.
I just want to take it off. Can you see all the little holes that run down? Here. But that's because he does short rows, but doesn't actually have you do a short. It is a short row, but you don't do anything to stop getting those holes. All you do is you work to a certain point, turn and work the other way. It's obviously deliberate, and maybe he's thought, I don't care that it makes little holes.
It doesn't look out of place.
Or maybe he thought that, yes, that I could class that as a little design feature, that there's holes that run all the way down there.
Sort of works.
And to be honest, at that point, I was glad I didn't have to do anything fancy with the short rows. Yeah. I read the pattern and I thought, marvellous, I can just knit, turn, knit, turn, knit, turn. It was easy. I was happy. But, just be aware, you could do some German short rows or whatever you wanted to eliminate those holes if you wanted to. So it's finished, and I'm incredibly grateful it's finished. Bryony thinks it's hilarious. She put it on and she's like, what is this thing you've knit? She thought it was the funniest thing ever. So, it's fun. Yeah, that's fun.
But the many positives are, you've seen already that Kay's now knitting me another tank top.
Yeah. And
it will have affected your opinion of general knitting as a whole. It has,
and I think because I found certain parts of this, the sleeves, I will have nightmares about the sleeves. But it does make you think, gosh, that other thing I'm knitting, it's just lovely.
What did she say? What did she say at the end of What's on Your Needles? I'm loving everything I'm knitting at the moment.
Yeah. And I think...
And I really do think that will be one of the reasons why. Yeah,
finishing this...
You learn to appreciate how good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very glad that I made it.
Yeah, so am I. I'm getting a new tank top.
Yeah, I'm very glad that I made it, and I would recommend the pattern to other people, because the issues that I've had are my issues. It's not issues with the pattern. I think it's very clever. It's well written.
But perhaps don't knit it if you're expecting to have a beautifully
flattering
to wear
garment,
afterwards.
Because
maybe if you approach it
I think it's just more of a statement piece,
But you have to be a very specific type of person to wear a statement piece. So,
and I'm just not that sort of person.
I think if you look at the effects it could have on your knitting as a whole, through going through that, I think it's worth doing.
Yeah, I think if you were a more sort of outgoing, flamboyant person than I am, then
you might well wear it.
You might well wear it out, and especially at sort of knitting festivals and things like that. Perfect, isn't it? If that's what you want.
Conversely, though, if you are like Kay, as we've said, the benefits at the moment do seem to be fairly boundless.
Yeah, so I'm not sorry I made it, but I am absolutely cock-a-hoop that it's finished. And I will wear it, I will wear it. So that's all that matters, isn't it?
Now, I do think we should say, because we've not mentioned this at all today, and that is that the Lady Mary mitts, which Kay showed you in What's Off Your Needles last episode, are now available.
Yep.
And these are part of your 2020 Platinum collection.
Yep.
The first pattern in that collection went out at Christmas. That's the Yuletide socks.
Yes.
The second one now has just gone out. Is it supposedly the start of spring? Is that when
Yes, it's supposed. Well, March the 21st, I think, is officially the start of spring, isn't it? So it's in this month.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a springtime project. Yeah.
The third pattern goes out in the summer.
June, yeah.
And then the fourth pattern goes out in the autumn.
September.
Yes,
yeah.
And that then will conclude the 2020 collection. Now, the 2020 Platinum collection is available to gold and platinum Bakery Ware patrons completely free of charge.
Yeah.
You get to download it and enjoy the pattern, and this pattern comes with another Nellie Wright story too, which is so exciting.
It's brilliant.
And I do think
it's really good.
We should just mention as well that you got a certain amount of... Now, it's really nice that Kay got a certain amount of frustrated comments from people who weren't gold patrons when she launched the pattern, because it means that clearly she's done a good job with the pattern and that people want it. But please do, if you're one of those people, the one thing that we never want to do is do anything. We're about spreading the love and spreading the good. But folks, you just need to remember that we would not be sat here were it not for our Bakery Bear patrons. And one of the things that we like to do all year is constantly try and add value, whether it be bronze, silver, gold or platinum patrons. We're always looking to add value, and one of the ways that we add value to our gold and platinum patrons is with the platinum patterns.
It is.
And now a platinum patron, they've got access to 10 patterns.
Yes, so if you're a platinum patron, you permanently have access to all of the platinum patterns.
That's 10 exclusive
and
patterns.
Now at the moment there's 10, which that's really...
What an achievement.
Yeah, I mean,
because you launched
really
it in
proud
2018. That was your first platinum collection.
Yeah.
And 10 gorgeous exclusive
patterns. Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder how many of them you could name. We'll do that maybe
don't
in
ask
little
me.
forfeit this year.
I think my memory just gets worse and worse. I think it does, doesn't it, as you get older?
I think we need to find out what else is actually off your needles today.
I've got one other thing that I finished, and I finished Dan's Crunkled socks. So the Crunkled socks is a pattern of mine which is currently in test knitting. So it'll be out probably towards the end of this month. I showed you the finished socks that are actually in the pattern last time, but this is a pair that I was knitting up for Dan, and I was using Osterman Step for this pair. And what I did with this pair, normally I would wash them and sort of block them. I don't really block Dan's socks because I don't have blockers big enough, but I would wash them and lay them flat to dry. I didn't with these. I wanted to show you the poofiness of this freshly knit Crunkled socks, because I just... Look how lovely and poofy and just... Poofy. They're just gorgeous.
Yes.
When you compare it to the non-crunkled side here, lovely and smooth, and then you look here, can you see the difference? They're just so nice. So I deliberately didn't block these, but they just look so lovely. And this pattern is just perfect for yarn like this. This is Osterman Step, and
which is great to wear, actually.
Oh, it's gorgeous yarn. It's really gorgeous yarn. And this colourway was number 48. So it's the one with aloe vera and jojoba in it. So it's colour number 48. And I had to put different coloured toes in because I realised when I'd nearly finished the first sock that I wasn't going to have enough yarn. This is all I had left. So I wouldn't have had enough to knit 2 toes with that, I'm certain. So I ordered another ball of Osterman Step in just this purple. This is colour 0132. And I think it looks great. The purple really matches well, I think. I love that, just having a different coloured toe. I think that's really fun. So I loved knitting these socks. I really, really loved knitting them. And I think it's a combination of the Crunkled pattern is just lovely. It's relaxed to knit. It would suit any type of yarn, I think. Plus, this Osterman Step is just gorgeous. If you've never knit with this and you fancy trying a ball, I couldn't recommend it more highly. It's so nice and soft, and it's just got something about it, and it must be the aloe vera and jojoba that's in it. It's lovely and plump and just knits up like a dream.
Beautiful.
Love them. So they're for you now.
Thank you so much. I
haven't washed them, but you can wear them straight away.
That's fine.
There you go.
That's fine. Thank you.
A little present for you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Folks, can you believe it? It's time for the Endy Bits. Now,
Wow.
did you see our latest patron-only show? Yes, every month we produce a show that all our patrons get to watch, and we have decided that this year is the year when it stops being just a camera pointing at two people and starts to be a properly produced live show. That's always been a challenge because having the right sort of gear and equipment to do it live, to produce something live, is totally different to producing a recorded show. But we finally have got some good stuff. And we did our very first show with that equipment
we did.
in February, and it's gone from being...
It worked really well.
That's been a stressful show for me.
Yeah.
To being just great.
It was really good.
And we're just like scratching the surface of the things which we can do. So get ready this year, folks, with the Pop Show, seeing it.
It allowed us to be more interactive, I think, didn't it?
Yeah. So, folks, if you've not seen that, it's linked to the show notes. You can go back and watch that and get ready for the next show later on this month, which should be just tremendous because now I feel not quite so nervous. And did you hear the latest episode of the radio show? We went in search of a Victorian...
Well, it's just it's a street, isn't it? It's called
Victoria Embankment.
It's called Victoria Embankment.
Yeah.
And I think it must be because it was built by the side of the river.
Yes.
Yeah, named after Queen Victoria, yeah.
And what we did along the way was we chatted about music and the impact it's had on our lives, but what we also did, which was super interesting, was compare, because on one side of the river you've got all these stunning Victorian houses from the late sort of 1800s, early 1900s, and then the other side you've got an estate running directly along the river that has just been built now.
Yeah.
And it was quite disconcerting.
Yeah.
Which side looked better?
Do you know what? We looked up the prices of the houses, the old Victorian houses, when we came back. I just did a Google search on house prices and like ones that were for sale. Couldn't believe how cheap they were.
For really gorgeous,
really cheap,
lovely
and
houses.
I think we were trying to work it out, and it's got to be because it's really close to the town centre.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as life has progressed, you know, as we've evolved, we no longer aspire to live near town centres.
No, and I think it must get a certain amount maybe of trouble. I don't know.
Maybe.
But the houses themselves are these just gorgeous houses inside and out. So that was just amazing.
So you can go and listen to that, but get ready for our next radio show, which is out next week, when we'll be going in search of a rather gorgeous bandstand.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yes. And along the way, we know you guys love it when we talk about history, so we're going to be talking about what did the Romans ever do for us? Now, you've got a couple of things to show, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, but I'll just say again about the Be Mindful Cal.
Yes.
So I explained earlier in the programme that it starts today and it'll run until May Day. The one thing I didn't say was that I will, of course, open a Ravelry thread where you can chatter away, you can post pictures of your progress. You can post finished items in there if you do get something finished, but that's not the aim of this knit along. We're not asking you specifically to finish anything. It's more just taking part and just like we've spoke about it earlier on, just getting involved and just having that little bit of time each day to just try and be in the present moment.
5 or 10 minutes is all it takes.
Yeah, just a little bit of time, and I'm sure we will do some prizes at the end of it, but again, that's not that's not what we want to sort of focus on. It's really just getting involved.
It's just a movement.
Just try and, if you've never done this before, and I think a lot of us out there probably are so used to knitting with something else going on that it probably will feel quite different to do, but I think it will be a good experience for us all, and I'd love to hear your experiences as well. So by all means, post anything you want in that Ravelry thread in terms of chatter and tell us how you're getting on and what you're doing and things you're knitting and things like that. So right, I've got a couple of prizes to give out.
Excellent.
So I will grab
Always
them.
fun.
Always fun.
And while she's grabbing those prizes, I'll let you know what we've got coming up this week. We'll obviously see you in 2 weeks for episode 146 and the start of the Pudding Club. But Kay's adding to her collection of reviews this week, which is rather lovely. Also, I'll be starting a little behind-the-scenes series showing you how to get the most out of our website. And also, as well, you're finishing off the Stitch in Time blanket series too. So lots going on, which is lovely.
Yep, fabulous.
Show us your lovely prizes.
So our Bits and Bobbin along, knit along, has now finished. It finished at the end of February, and we had loads of people participating in that. It was just brilliant. So thank you to everybody that took part. And I've got 2 prizes now to give. So I've drawn randomly from the Ravelry thread. It was from numbers 2 to 456. 456, that's quite cool. 2 to 456. And the first prize I've got was I made up a little Bits and Bobs cowl kit, but of course you can do whatever you want with this yarn. You don't have to knit a cowl by any means. You can do whatever you want. We've got a skein of Cascade Heritage, which in this lovely grey colour, and then to go with it I've got this set of minis from Hedgerow Yarns in Patchwork Pocket, which I thought just went lovely together. So this lovely set has been won by number 248, and that's Leslie in Maryland. And Leslie is Ditzy Mermaid, which is a brilliant name on Ravelry. So Leslie, this yarn is yours. If you wouldn't mind sending me either a Ravelry message with your full name and address, or you can contact us via the website on the sort of contact button and just give me your details and I'll get that sent.
Lovely.
Well done. And then the second prize was this gorgeous bag, if you remember. I purchased this patchwork bag, which I love. I'm definitely going to go back to this shop, and it's from a shop called Made by Rachel on Etsy. Absolutely love it, it's gorgeous. And this lovely bag was won by number 372, and that's Dana in Winnipeg.
Wow.
So somebody in America and somebody in Canada. So Dana in Winnipeg, and Dana is Dana Ray Knits on Ravelry. So again, Dana, if you can either send me a Ravelry message with your full name and address, or via the website is fine. Either way is lovely, and I will get that prize sent out to you. So well done to Leslie and Dana.
Marvellous. Folks, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. It's been great to see you. And
yes,
now is the time when, because I know that you guys love it when we do the Pudding Club, when we do new adventures.
Yes.
And that does really feel then like Bakery Bears season. And
it'll be a good job they've done all that walking, because then you can eat all the Pudding Club stuff.
Why do you
not
think
feel bad?
we do these yearly walks and runs? Oh yes. And actually, I must just say, why is it Etsy? Now, please tell everyone.
You're going to say you can't find a shop.
Loom yarns. What do people need to look for? Last episode we mentioned loom yarns, and I know a few people went away to look for it.
Right, really?
I went to look for it and couldn't find it. What did you look for?
So this is the skein of yarn
that she showed last time, and I know a few people went looking for this.
Oh gosh, well
I also went looking for it and I couldn't find it either.
I'm really sorry. I mean,
well, it's not your fault, it's Etsy's fault.
Well,
because why is it I can't even find your Etsy shop on Etsy?
Etsy's search, you're better off just Googling. For example, this is actually loom wool. If I show you the back, loom wool. For whatever reason, it's always really difficult, I find, to find Etsy shops.
Well, what I'll do though as well is I'll put the address for loom in the show notes today.
Yeah, lovely.
Cool.
I need to knit that.
And also as well, I should put the address for
Made by Rachel.
Because I'm sure if you search for it, you'll never find it.
Yeah.
So, folks, thank you so much for watching. We will see you in 2 weeks for episode 146. And yes, finally, it will be time for us, or me, to eat more cakes as Kay brings back the Pudding Club.
Yay.
See you, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern, get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down